to the computer.
Saving it to the cloud.
I think we're live. Christina, welcome.
We're live.
We're on the cloud. We're on the computer. Welcome to the podcast, Christina the Canncierge. I'm so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. I'm so stoked.
Yay. Okay, well, let's start business in the front. Tell us what the Canncierge is and offers and all of the things.
Oh, I can do that. Okay, so the name is a play on words. The Concierge, career in hospitality, and I'm a cannabis educator. So generally I work with women and others to give them a functional education to make really informed consumption decisions when they go out into the world of weed. I've been at this for 26 years as an advocate, cannabis patient, and citizen scientist. I'm also a sociologist and economist, so I understand a lot of the other underpinnings that the criminalization of this plant has done to our world, especially women. And 3 or 4 years ago, I was laid off from a job in public education, which I absolutely adored. And I felt sorry for myself for a few months. And then I decided I'm going to start being outward about my weed use, be a serial normalizer, and it grew into a business. So I'm consulting, doing education individually and with groups and workshop settings, as well as consulting with companies on marketing and creative endeavors. And it is definitely my dream come true.
I love that. Living the dream, living out your passion, helping other people. And honestly, we were just talking about this before we started recording, but normalizing the use of cannabis. And I think normal is such a weird, toxic word. Yes. I held myself against normal for so long, and that made me feel bad about my body size. It made me feel bad about my sexuality, about all of the things that make me wonderful and weird are not normal. And I am so far away from normal now that I'm just whoever I date has to also be very, very weird, and just in an understanding of you're just not like this world, but I don't think we're meant to be. And I think cannabis actually helps us be ourselves more.
We're renormalizing.
We're making everything it's supposed to be weird and more comfortable, because I think we get so fettered. You use this word also, which I loved. We just get so dragged down by these ideas of who we're supposed to be. When this healing plant is here, and it's just kind of shrouded in this shame and secrecy that folks have been laden it with, that comes way back from prohibition eras and before, and again, profiting companies or whatever. But tell me more about what you would suggest to a first time cannabis user, someone who's really curious about popping into cannabis for self-care, especially maybe even in these times, because we're recording this in the pandemic. If you're listening to this in 2022, what's it like?
I know. And this is a weed cough you hear, by the way, a weed cough. So sorry about that. Okay, so what I would tell a first timer, so in my practice as a consultant, what I do is I give my clients a questionnaire that I've written. I have a background in ethnomethodology, which is questionnaire writing. And so I have written this.
Tell me that word again.
Ethnomethodology.
Ethnomethodology.
It's research. Yes. It's the narrative part of research versus the data. It's giving the story to the data. So essentially I I get all this information from my clients, asking about their prior use, their view, their goals and aspirations for what they want out of this experience. Maybe it's just information. And then I also ask them, it's confidential. So I ask them specific drugs that they might be taking, or other types of health-oriented questions. And then from that point, we set a time to talk. So I've gotten a bit of information from them back in the beginning. So without having that, what I would tell people is start low and slow. Do not go straight to edibles first. No. And don't trust a random bud tender. And be open to things that might have scared you in the past. I have a friend who, as we call it, got weed poisoned. She really just smoked too much weed and needed a sandwich. And So for 20 years, I've been like, bitch, you just need to try a little something else. But now she's all hopped up on CBD and extremely happy.
Mhm.
So you really can't be, in this day and age when we have so much new knowledge about the constituents and compounds that exist in this plant and their benefits, you can't be closed-minded anymore. There's a lot more nascent research from places like UCSD. The way you're going to think about, if you want that kind of data, if that speaks to your heart and you want to know that a scientist at UCSD says this is good for you, do it. There, it exists. A lot of people are like, no, there's no research. There's a shit ton of research. Most of it's not from the US because we're xenophobic, but Israel has a shit ton. Like, there's just tons of it. There's tons of it. It's all over the world. So there's research to back it. And then there's people like me. You know, sometimes my friends' moms won't listen to them, but I've been hired many times and been on Zoom with moms and grandmas of my friends and clients who are afraid of the stigma of going to a dispensary. They're afraid of being known as someone who uses cannabis, and they had serious, deeply held misperceptions that precluded them from even researching it. And I have had clients who are in positions in professional world where they can't have search results with cannabis or anything in them based on what they do for a living. So when they have a conversation with me, I know what they are trying to achieve. I know their background, and I'm impartial, I'm objective, and I'm not going to push somebody to do something they're not, comfortable doing. My husband's not a THC user, and so I have like kind of a case study in my life all the time because I'm trying so many different products. I try everything before I recommend something to my clients, always. And he's oftentimes my guinea pig too because he has no THC tolerance. So I'm like, here, try this 2 milligram thing and see how it works. And so, I have a great story of a client who is now 100 years old, and she's not driving to her work now, but homegirl was driving to the company that her son owned. It was like 2 miles from her house. She'd drive to and from there, 99 years old. And she was having nerve pain in her hip and leg. And her granddaughter contacted me, and she's like, this is a woman who does not use, like, nothing like this ever. And so, great, let's work on finding a single milligram, something to either inhale or ingest, and then let's work on topicals and a patch. And this little lady got the weed delivered for her. She didn't even know this existed. So she had a patch, a transdermal patch, THCA, so she didn't get high. And she's a little lady. So she cut that little thing in fours, and she puts it on, and it still works for her. And she never would have even thought to try something with cannabis in it if she hadn't had a conversation where I was on the phone and her granddaughter was sitting there. And so it's extremely gratifying for me because it adds to my practice and how I'm dealing with folks of different ages and belief systems and backgrounds and health conditions and statuses. But it's also so rewarding because I'm helping people like my grandparents who have seen so much innovation, and they deserve to reap the benefits of what we've learned over the last few years. And although they haven't themselves been involved in it, it's up to us. We're the future generation that they've been talking about. And so that's what I hope to do for my daughter, so that she can advocate for whatever, is important in her life. But long answer.
Great answer.
Get some education. Talk to someone you trust who is a cannabis user. Do a little research. I do consults, and I text with clients all the time. And it's just a wonderful joy of my life. And then they tell me that it's it's helping them. And that is so, so wonderful. That's some of the best parts of my life are helping other people and them finding success with something. And other than parenting and being a family member, that's definitely like the most important thing. And I love weed so much. And I just love what it does for humanity. It's just so great. It's really gratifying.
Yay. I'm really glad people like you exist in this world. Like, I think I just want people to take away from this conversation, not just like weed is great and like this is a thing that can help you, but also like you can really love what you do and you can really find a niche for yourself, synthesizing parts of your background that you didn't know all came together into something that can actually create a career for you. And like we get really boxed into this idea that we have to trade our time for money, we need job security and all that kind of stuff. And of course it's terrifying being an entrepreneur, like relying on yourself, right? Yeah. So it's like, but also the fun thing about cannabis is it makes it a little easier to deal with that uncertainty.
Yes, it does. And literally paid weed sometimes. I'm like, it's not bad. It's not a bad gig. Yeah. But in, what I find key to doing that, great segue to professionalizing your passion, as I call what I have done, is keeping it authentic. The second you're not real, it's just like you're faking something. And I have to be exactly who I am. And it's not for everyone, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But I always say, like, my family and dearest friends follow my feed. They'd call me out real quick if there was like falsification station. So, I mean, being authentic. And what I thought when I first started being public with my work, because I did it for many years, just not realizing it was informal. I was my family and friends' weed coach because I was just the stoner, and they're like, what do you think about this? I'm like, well, let me tell you, and I was like their, default for all this information. So what I find now is that it just makes sense. I'm just basically answering the same kind of questions that my friends and family still are asking me. I mean, I get the funniest questions, like from my mom or random old ladies that will hear me talking, about something, or it's great. It's really great. And people feel comfortable asking me questions they think are stupid. I'm like, don't ever say that. Like, don't ever say that. And what, the one thing that people constantly bring up is CBD. They're always like, I'm going to get high. And I'm like, no, you're going to be really disappointed if you want to get high and you take CBD.
Yeah, you are going to be really disappointed.
But if somebody wants to do, people do contact me, ask me like, how do I start a business in cannabis? And it's all about being authentic to yourself. Like, I happen to have a background in community organizing, education, fundraising, and hospitality, and then like weed. And I'm a creative person. So like, I just really have like, hey, well, project-based learning and from of everything else. Like, I'm learning as I go, building the ship as I sail it, pressure off, and also having multiple gigs to pay you so that it's not stressful, because I have a traditional gig. I'm a bookkeeper, an assistant, and like I do other stuff that's great. It's virtual. It's so fitting for my lifestyle. And I'm also really blessed because my husband and I have done well for ourselves, and he has a great job still. And so I'm able to do that. And I am grateful for that every day, because I know that, the majority of people do not have my situation. So, and I grew up with a lot of scarcity, so I know what that feels like. And I'm like really grateful. But I encourage I hope there are other people like me. There are. I know so many of them, and it's just so awesome. And I come from, my last traditional career was at a very progressive district of public charter schools in San Diego. And it was extremely collaborative. So I come from a place of, I am an expert, but I'm also a learner. So I'm constantly like, hey, we do similar work. Do you want to work together? A lot of people are miserly with their, they feel like might be threatening. But I think collaboration is key, and collaboration over cooperation over competition has been extremely successful for me. So especially working with women, it's something that I've tried to be very outward about. And so finding like a mentor, somebody to talk to you about things, also realizing that sometimes that looks like consulting. So sometimes strangers ask me a lot of questions. I'll answer a couple, but if I'm talking to you for more than 5 minutes, we should set up a call, and you should pay me for my time, and we'll do this. And people do. So it's great. It's really awesome. And people are also learning from me, and I hope to, dispel people's, so I recently had a call with someone who was, like you were saying, starting before you're ready. She's like, oh, I don't know. I don't have a website yet. I'm like, that doesn't matter. No, doesn't matter. You have an Instagram page.
Yeah.
And totally starting before you're ready, and just being willing to fall down and make mistakes, and then ask people for help.
Yeah. And being willing.
And also interwebs are, you can learn anything. So it's research, being inquisitive.
Yeah. And also being thoughtful too about like when you're researching, like about sources and like who's giving you what information, because anybody can write anything on the internet. Like right. It doesn't mean it's true just because it's on there. So figuring out who you admire and who you trust.
I can go on a tangent on critical thinking.
The most important skill in college was critical thinking. It's like an expensive degree to learn that, but you can learn that on your own.
It was. I think it's sometimes more expensive to learn on your own.
Yes. That's your tuition for being an entrepreneur. It's not the degree, it's the mistakes.
Yes.
But also being willing. What has slowed me down a lot is letting failure stop me and then not getting right back up and starting again. Like just falling on my ass and just laying there for a while, which is what you feel like doing. And it's helpful. You lay on your ass for a day, but like, just keep it moving. Cause like, once you realize that failure is just part of the part of success, and like 90% of success looks like failure, then you're like, oh, let me get through this as fast as I can.
Yes. I tell that to my daughter a lot. And because she was making like a Rube Goldberg machine, and her teacher's already telling you it's going to fail 20 times before it, succeeds. So count how many times, and so I'm like, it's a numbers game, man, statistics. Mm-hmm. And I got unafraid of failure a long time ago, because I just like, it's just so much better to make mistakes and learn from that shit. And I was really afraid of math for a long time, because I didn't have a solid foundation in it as a young mathematician. But when I was in college, I had really fucking hard math classes for my degree, and I did not realize that. And so I had to sort of swallow my pride, and I got a tutor, and homeboy taught me, he was a fellow student, and I paid him, but also he asked me about like social stuff, because he was kind of a nerd, a little just closed and didn't have a lot of friends. And I was like, dude, you're awesome. Nerds are great. I'm a nerd. I'm social. Mm-hmm. And I remember him meeting me at a party once, and I was like, come inside. He's like, will you come outside? And I was like, come inside. And he's like, will you come outside and meet me? And I was like, okay. So I had to like go outside, but he just didn't feel comfortable coming in alone. And it was like this weird thing, but the more that I got to know him, and I understood like, oh, your frailties are strengths of mine, I felt so much more comfortable asking him, nope, I still don't understand that. You're going to have to explain that for the 25th time. And he's like, fine, do it. We do it. And I got so much better at math because I advocated for my own needs in that sense. And now I just do that now, and I apply that to now.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Just like figure out how to keep working on something until you get it, and don't like get your pride and ego all caught up in like whether you get it. I think so many of us fake it.
Yeah. We all learn in such different ways. Like my husband will try to tell me something. I'm like, no, I gotta I need to do it. I need to physically do the thing. Otherwise, I'm not going to understand it.
Yeah.
So figuring out what type of learner you are is also, because I mean, everybody's different. It's just, there's no shame in it.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, it's so interesting because I think I learn in a combination of ways, but like it really helps me to get all three, like hands-on and visual and auditory, like if I can get that mix. And also to be learning different things and constantly applying them to each other. Like right now I have this practice where I go in the forest every day for like probably about an hour at least, just but usually stoned and just walking around doing a little dancing and that's when I work on my
I love your forest side.
I love it too. And like, it's also, I'm in a period of deep study. I keep pulling through this coronavirus. I keep pulling the Hermit card from my tarot deck because I'm meant to be just like here and learning. And so it's great because like I synthesize a lot of what I'm learning because I take that time and walk and clear my head. And I wish I had employed that level of self-discipline and that level of self-care when I was in college and other times in my life where I was focused a lot on learning, because I think it would have synthesized and helped me grow faster, I think. But you know, I mean, I didn't really come to terms with understanding failure as truly part of success until last year when I really like fell on my ass a lot. And I was like, oh, this is just me releasing what's not working for me and raising up to a new level. And like,
for sure.
Yeah.
That was me in 2017
Yeah.
when I transitioned to my current work. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, and also that moment in your entrepreneurial journey where you realize that like job security is a myth. You might as well be renting.
Haha. Yeah, dude. They didn't. Yeah, no. I really
show up one day.
Years ago.
Yeah, you just show up one day and your job doesn't exist anymore because you're a line item in a budget. You're not treated like a valuable, unique human being. Whereas like when you're doing your own thing and you're an entrepreneur, like I feel really grateful that right now in my life, everything I do is something only I can do. And like that feel like I live in my mom's neighborhood now. I'm the only person who can be her daughter. So like there's so many unique things I get to do. And I feel super grateful that that's how my life is now versus like me just being some lawyer in some company someplace, like living for 3 weeks of vacation. Like that's not the life I want. Yeah.
And like sending items and identifying as myself as a caregiver in that sense. And because I was starting to lose that connection and feeling really bad about it and guilty. And it's not my fault. It's really just, it's the times. And valuing those other roles is also, you know, like I am the only one that can mother this particular child and these fur animals that I fucking love my animals. And my husband being a wife and an entrepreneur and a spiritual being for sure, you know, like not tethered to an organized religion. I'm definitely omniscient energy, probably more female than male type of belief system. But I've been pulling some interesting tarot cards too. I only have one deck and I see people collect different tarot decks. So I'm kind of like, oh, how do you do that? You know, a friend of mine gave me this deck. I feel like I have to be like, they have to come to me. I don't know why, but I've been pulling a lot of like the yin and yang card. And for me, that's translated into things that like I really don't want to do. like daily exercise. It's just really, I do it, but I do it really begrudgingly. And I'm trying to reframe that to be more motivated. And I want to be as excited to get like thank my body and be like, I love you. Cause I do that. I'm like, yay. But I want to get as excited to do that as I do to like smoke weed.
Oof.
I don't know if I can reach that level.
I don't know. I mean, It's possible. It's so possible. It's so possible you can get excited about that level of self-care, but like sometimes you just gotta like do the thing and act your way into feeling.
Yeah,
rather.
it's like I want to feel, maybe it's the feeling of I get after the exercise that I want to, I'll feel that good. Yeah.
Yeah. It does. And also I found that exercise helps me get more stoned. So when I've done, and I mean, I do a lot of exercise that involves heart openers, which is, I think, the key. I don't think it's just movement. I think it's actual heart openers, which is like the physical motion of like doing things that open up this region, your chest, right? Like you can open wide like this. You can do like
Oh.
a hug. You can hug the air in front of you. You can just like kind of, I like to also just kind of pump open. It's hard to demonstrate in a chair, but I do this like motion where it's almost like I'm just like popping out fairy rings on my back, right? So, and that opens up the heart, and I think that helps elevate my cannabis experience, get a little more stoned. Are there any other hacks you have for like kind of leveling up how stoned you can be if you're already a stoner and you just need a pandemic strength level up in your?
Oh. Well, if you're already a stoner but you're not a dabber, that is something to explore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do. We should do something on concentrates, actually, because it's something that is really intimidating to people, and it was to me as well until a few years ago. And it's diametrically changed my cannabis practice for sure.
Oh.
Different effects, different effects. So I would say look into a nice dab situation. Doesn't have to be expensive. You can do a nectar collection, a little tiny torch, and a little gram of some nice live resin. Live resin only, ladies and gents, everybody. Try it. Just saying.
Live resin. I love it. I've dabbed, but only at the Glowing Goddess Getaway. That was where I had my first dab, and Saline told me this on the occasion of my first dab.
Oh,
Saline tells me, Bevan, just don't start dabbing at home because then you can never go back to flower. You're just gonna want to dab. Which I was like, duly noted, because I already had noticed that my tolerance had gotten much higher. And I like saving it for me for special occasions. So like,
yes.
right. But if you're a person, I mean, dabbing is so great because like it's much lower odor. And so if you're the kind of person who needs to like smoke and function, like use your THC and function, and or use your THC in a way where you're not going to get caught. Like if you're around people who are judgy, or like you're in an environment that's not weed conducive, it's almost the equivalent of smoking a whole joint, like in one dab.
It's pretty intense, but you can control it. You can
Yeah.
control it, and you can now find ratios where
Mm-hmm.
there's some CBD in it. And I even my dad hit my puff coat with it because I was like, "Look, Dad, you can try this because it's not that much weed," and it was great.
Oh.
But the other thing about dabs are that they're more they last longer.
Yeah.
And I feel it's a deeper level of, it's just different. It's a little bit
Different.
deeper. But I mean, I love smoking flower too. I'm like 50-50.
Yeah.
It really depends. Would say having some dabs in your freezer for, once in a while is not a bad deal to have at
Yeah.
home. And also, how blessed are you to have gotten your first dab from Saline? Like, I'm
Well,
just saying, like,
she wasn't my bud tender. She was just there with the experience.
oh,
My bud
well,
tender,
to have her.
but to have her there, right? And like my bud tender was Alex, and that's just because, like,
Oh,
you know,
then you're good. Then
yeah,
she is the ultimate dab fairy.
exactly. So I feel like I had the true Glowing Goddess Getaway experience. What I loved about it too is that I learned that dabbing helps me. So when I'm smoking weed, right, I like to smoke towards the end of the day because I don't like to not be smoking weed anymore. So if I'm just like smoking and then I have to not because like I'm dry, I don't like to smoke when I drive. So like I've noticed that when I dab, it clears up. I don't feel grumpy at the end of it. And when I'm smoking flower, I feel very grumpy when I stop smoking weed. But when I'm dabbing, it just kind of dissipates. And it's just like, oh, okay. So for me, it's like a good morning situation. It's like very spiritual. And
Maybe it peters off,
yeah.
Because actually, I notice the same thing. Because I'll forget that. Like, I usually, like, if I'm smoking weed, I'll be like, oh, like an hour or two later, I'll be like, smoke more little weed. But after a dab or two, like, I don't go back. I'm like, la la la.
Yeah.
But it's a long time. That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
That's really.
So
And
I
then
mean,
also, what the other thing that I like to do that is just kind of like to up your weed game is really layer your lifting. I've written a couple articles about this where I play with using multiple applications of different weed products at the same time. you know, like from all these different senses. So like from a great infused bath to smoking weed to taking an edible, laying, you know, in your bath and then using topicals afterward. I mean, there's just like all these ways to just totally personalize your experience. And the fact that, you know, like it doesn't have to be scary. You can smoke a puff, take a quarter of an edible and infuse your bath. I mean, like, it's just a whole other like atmosphere. But you know, I journal when I do that too. You know, it's like you just meld all these things together, and that really is like, it's way different than just sitting around. It was great, but it's a whole different, you know, application of that head blood on weed type of situation, you know. So I'm a big fan of combining my different products in thoughtful and just fun ways. Sometimes I'll just eat a shit ton of edibles and watch a movie that I love.
Yeah.
But I love combining things and just variety.
I love that. I think the layering is so smart too, and like creating ritual around it. And then journaling is such a good way to connect with spirit and like the goddess and like see what's coming through. Like, I was literally just talking to Noemi Sparks yesterday, who does Ganja. She teaches Ganja yoga. And she was talking about this Gabby Bernstein method of like meditate for 10 minutes and then journal. And I was like, but she adds smoking weed before meditating and then journaling. And I was like, oh, you mean it's like Ganja Gabby Bernstein?
I love it.
It's like all these ways, like, I mean, but it's just different ways of connecting to spirit. And like sometimes the cannabis just helps. It relieves the pain that's distracting you. It relieves the emotional pain that's distracting you. And it just enables you to kind of just get up into your higher self, who is always okay. Like your higher self is always loving and chill. Like that's the truth of your true nature. Like think of a baby, unless their needs aren't being met, like they're loving and chill and exploring and excited. And so it's a really just beautiful thing to create that for yourself, is you're like reparenting. We were talking about this earlier too, like just connecting to yourself from that higher space.
I love the rituals of stuff. Like if you could see, like I always travel with like little textiles to kind of like personalize my candle and incense and like, I don't know, just like spiritual totems. And I like kind of let them like jump out at me like as I'm leaving, you know. So I brought like selenite, and it just I wonder what that is. Like I do love the ritual of and like vibe setting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's what the term it might be, but a vibe curator. But
Yeah.
even for myself, you know, it's like kind of treat it like someone's coming over or whatever, you know. You can like make it special, but it's just for you.
Yeah, it's just for you.
Just for you.
What's your sign?
I'm a Gemini. I was born June 15th.
Okay.
Year of the horse in the Chinese zodiac. And I know nothing else.
1978?
Yes.
Oh, same. Also year of the horse.
Hell yeah, girl. Hell yeah.
And so do you know your rising and your moon?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, I don't. I wish I did.
Next time we hang out, I'll do your chart and
oh my God.
We'll dig it.
What are you doing later? Just kidding.
I'm doing my budget.
You're like, I've had enough.
It's not had enough. I've just time blocked. Like I gotta get this budget finished. I've been talking about, I think, the last 2 podcast episodes about how I'm working on like getting my budget together and like getting. Yes. I don't make that much money, but I actually have no idea really how much I make and what's like a business expense, and like really digging in and figuring it all out. So that's what I'm working on. I've time blocked. Yes, we're doing it. We're doing it. I'm going to have success in this. I'm so excited to just have it over with. It's like,
you'll feel great when it's done. You're going to smoke something and go dancing. And you'll be like, fuck yeah.
Exactly. It's like, it's sometimes for me, changing a habit is about getting sick of myself, not changing it.
Oh my God. I think the same thing often. I'll be like, I'm so sick of myself doing this. Why the fuck am I doing this?
Yes.
But then I change it.
Yeah. Why am I still doing this? Why? Yeah.
Why am I still doing this? Exactly. Yeah. That'd be a great podcast name, actually. Why am I still doing this?
Why am I still? That is a good podcast name. So can you tell me, just before we wrap up, will you tell me a fun weed story that you enjoy, like one of your favorite, like just stories of smoking weed?
Oh my God. Yes. My first dad. This is actually a great segue. This is
Great.
hilarious.
Uh-huh.
So this was early, like I started going to Pink Sessions like 3 years ago, I think. And the Pink Sesh, if you don't know what it is, it's a San Diego based women's cannabis club and brand. They're actually launching. But I started going to these women's sessions. They're on Mondays in the middle of the day, and they kind of fit in perfectly, hours before you have to do school pickup, like fucking awesome way to start off your week, right? And I remember going, and Leslie, Flowers on Flowers, was there, and who I adore. And she's like, "Hey, would you like a dab?" And I said, "I haven't had one of those in like a long time. How strong is it?" She's like, "It's strong." I'm like, "Okay, I'll try it." And so I do it. And it was she's like, "That was a big dab." I was like, "Oh." And I definitely was on silent mode. I remember sitting down, eating something and being like, da, 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 like out of body a little bit. We were like, "Oh, okay." And so the sesh ends, and it's like, maybe 2 hours later at this point, I'm still really, really high. And I had to go to Home Depot for some reason. So I go to Home Depot, and I'm like, "What?" Like shopping, like what? Okay, I gotta get to school pickup. And I'm like, I gotta eat some protein. So I eat some protein. And then I'm like, what the fuck? And it's like 20 minutes till school pickup. And I was like, I don't know if I can drive. And so I finish my food. And meanwhile, I call my dad. I'm like, "Dad, you might need to go to school pickup." And he's like, "Why? What's wrong?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just really high." He's like, "Christina." And I was like, "Oh." And that dad voice sobered me right up. And I was like, "Doo-doo-doo." But it was like a 5-hour high. It was ridiculous. I was really too. So thanks again, Leslie, for that fucking shit show. He didn't pick her up. I was safe. Everything was good. But it was very funny.
Oh, that is hilarious. I love that. I feel like as someone who has now learned, I went from like having never dabbed before by like my 5th getaway, which like, in actual time, it wasn't that long, but like my 5th getaway, like then I was maybe even my 3rd getaway, I was learning how to dab tend. And by the time my 5th getaway came around, I was like fully like a main dab tender in the dab thing, just dabbing
Yes.
people. And also you can like really small, medium, large dabbing is a real thing. Like for me, I just don't have the lung capacity to take more than a small dab. Like, so whenever Alex dabs for me, she usually clears pre-COVID times,
I
clears
know.
the chamber for me. So it's
She's honestly one of my favorite people to dab with.
yeah, she's great.
Fantastic.
And also
the whole
she's
setup, everything's got like all the little pearls and knows her temperatures. She's literally who I will consult about dab.
she's really I love that this is the Alex fan show. I'm gonna send her this.
I know.
Anyway, so Christina, how can people find you on the internet to learn from you, connect from you, buy your awesome merch, like your mask that says "It's a weed cough"? That's a good one. I've said that to a lot of people. It's a good joke.
Excellent. I have to send you. Yes, it's a weed cough. I'm stoned, not sick. Oh yeah. So you can find me on the interwebs, on Instagram at Canncierge. So it's TheCanncierge, and the website of the same name. And hook me up with yourself. I'm sorry, I'm just a little taken with Biscuit. Sorry, she was like doing something really cute and I forgot what I was talking about. Contact me if you would like to live or learn about cannabis. I'm about it. And I so appreciate being here today. This was so fun. I just adore you, Bevan. I'm so excited and this was just a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks, Christina. I also truly find you delightful. The first time we hung out, like we were on Zoom for like, I think 2.5 hours. I was like,
it was great.
it happened. I was like, wow, I thought it'd be like an hour-long hangout, and then suddenly it's like 10:30, and I'm like, whoa, dude, we can chat forever. So I'm super glad to bring our IRL friendship into the podcast land and share your wisdom with my audience. I hope that everyone like felt some sort of empowerment from this, like whether it's to go out and try your first puff of something to get some relief, or if it's to get a little more high, or if it's to elevate your cannabis experience, or if it's to sort of step into your passion and pursue something great for your life that is unique to what you're here to bring. I feel like Christina really shows what's possible in all of those arenas and more.